Well, it's another windy day out here. What I'm going to try to do is I've been trying to get the fuel line off the fuel pump down here, and I'll tell you, this thing is really, really hard as a rock. I have an empty gas can underneath, so that if I get any fuel out, I want to dump it into the can. But I'm just about ready to cut the hose. I just can't get it loose. It's pretty fossilized. I have some fresh hose sitting here. Ain't gonna work, so put a knife on it here. What I was worried about was, am I going to get any gas out? And the answer is no. There's nothing coming out of the hose. Yeah, 5/16 fits. So what I've done is I have a piece of hose. I'm going to hook this end to the fuel pump. I have a fuel filter with a clear bowl in it, and it's not a high flow filter, and normally you wouldn't put one of these on the suction side, but I want to see if the fuel pump will draw and whether I'll get fuel in here, because my first concern would be that the fuel pump diaphragm could be bad from sitting here all these years, although the fact that there's no gas in there, maybe it has survived. So I'm going to hook this up, goes to the fuel pump. The opposite end is going to go into a fresh can of gasoline, and we'll see how things go from there. So at this point, I have the fuel line hooked up. I've got it into a can of gas under the engine compartment. I have a fire blanket and a fire extinguisher standing by. My biggest concern would be that we start pumping fuel up, and that the float sticks or something, and we get a gas leak. So I'm going to be on the watch for that. In the meantime, I got a battery hooked up. Let's see if it'll crank. Well, as long as I'm at it here, I am going to try hitting it with a starting spray and see if it'll fire at least. See if I've got ignition. Just see if I can make it fire at all before I go to the next step. I spun it long enough that I got oil pressure. The oil light went out, so that was a good thing. I've got the coil wire pulled loose there. It's out of the coil and over to the front of dash firewall area, pretty close to it. I want to see if I can get it to give me a spark. And I can't be two places at once. want to try this one more time and see if I can get a spark out of it. But otherwise it's going to need ignition work as well as fuel work. Oh. I didn't see any spark there on either time, nor did I hear it even in the video. Usually you'll hear a high voltage crack somewhere, but nothing. So, more work to do. Well, what I think I'm going to try to do now, I'm going to get a set of ignition points in condenser and try to get the ignition working. But in the meantime, I would like to take the top off the carburetor and see what I've got inside. Whether, I have a carburetor kit available. The question is, do I need, does it need an accelerator pump? Is it all full of crud? What does it look like? So I'm going to start and dig in here. First thing I want to do is just try to spray it down a little bit, because it's just all full of grunge, and I don't want to get it inside the carburetor. So that's gum out. It's just it's a good carburetor cleaner. But these old 2-barrels, it's usually not too hard. I haven't done this model in many years, but it's usually something that you can get the top off pretty easy and get a look inside. But like I say, when I do it, I don't want to end up dropping a bunch of junk inside. So let's see what we can do here. Probably. It's the tube for the choke. It probably doesn't need a flare nut wrench, but I happen to have one in hand. So. Okay. Let's see. Vent tube. Gotta hold this big nut. It takes like a 1-inch open end. Like that. Like that. Take off spring clip, linkage there. Take out the screws and try to gently lift it off with a putty knife. I'd like to try to not break the gasket. Maybe hopefully I can save it. But we shall see. Some of these screws are pretty darn loose, so almost like the gaskets may have shrunk over the years. Just kind of watching to make sure that, see, like that one is a different length. That one's longer than the others. Alright, I have all the screws out. I've got this link clip out there. I think what I need to do is get this one here, which is the fast idle cam. Oh, that isn't real tight either. Somebody's had this carburetor apart, I would say. You want to get that off. And I'm not going to move any adjustments, so it's just that guy needs to go on with the rear like this, and I'm going to take the cam off for the moment and just lay it here in the right orientation. Okay, so that's free, so it should have, it's like all the screws are out. I bought a carburetor kit, and that's because a lot of times you'll break a gasket doing it. Oop, there it is. Okay. Not that easy. Let's see what we got here. Alright, the gasket came off pretty intact. I mean, it's not broken, so I can probably reuse it. It's above the float level, so you can sometimes get away with that. That moves all right. The accelerator pump is definitely in bad shape, so I may need to replace that one. The float, needle and seat looks mostly okay. The float looks okay. Power valve moves. I will double check the float level. Now there's a fair amount of sediment down in the bottom of the bowl. The jets look like they're probably open and clean. There's nothing in them. But the fuel evaporating left sediment in the bottom. I'll have to try to clean that out. And see if I can get the other passages cleaned. I'm going to spray down a paper towel with gum out and go in there and see if I can get some of that out. And just a quick look at the float. According to I'm having trouble because I don't know the exact part number of the carb, but looking at the specs, the standards seem to be about 1 in 11/32, which is, and at this to the top of the float, and I think it's right about spot on. So I'm not too worried about it. And taking a second look at the accelerator pump, it's not great, but it does still have some spring to it. So for the moment, I'm just going to spray the inside down, and I'm going to bolt it back together. I've got the float bowl pretty well cleaned out, and I'll spray the air bleeds and stuff with gum out. And for now, I won't put the whole carb kit in because the float isn't stuck. It's just I could have a bad or a leaking needle, but the measurement seems to be on spec. So for now, I got things rinsed down. I got the float bowl cleaned out. For first look, it doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to just put it together I need to get fuel to it, and I need to get ignition working, or nothing's going to go any further. So this is the first check, and I'll go dig in harder later. You also want to make sure that if you're working with gum out or something, you want to make sure you're wearing chemical resistant gloves, even though mine just tore. I'll have to go get another one in a minute. But You don't want to get that stuff on your skin if you can help it. I was sort of worried that there'd be a half-inch of gunk or something in there. So I got all the screws in, and the linkages reattached. I need to get this little clip back on here. Sometimes you get a lot of challenge. And the worst thing is that they'll oftentimes want to spring out and fly away. Yep, looks good. Okay. Gloves, but that's good. You just need to be very careful putting these back on so that you don't cross thread. They're very easy cross thread. That one's brass. You really want to try to have them mostly threaded in before you ever put a wrench on. This one, itself, snug it down. This one is now tight. I can turn it the rest of the way. This is a famous spot on quadrajets where you can screw them up. Just getting that thing cross-threaded and screwing up the fitting. It's either, I mean, you could screw up the half-inch one and you could screw up the 1-inch one that goes into the aluminum. And man, if you mess that one up, you're really in trouble. My dad did that on a quadrajet one time, and man, did he have a mess. It's tight, all buttoned down. Well, all right. What I'm going to say is that's good for right now. I got to get a set of ignition points and condenser. My bet is that the condenser's in trouble, but I need points and condenser and a fuel pump. See what I can get. I haven't been doing video on my repairs because the windstorm, you just wouldn't hear anything, and it's been very difficult working out here. So anyhow, new fuel pump installed. I used the trick of putting a longer bolt in, finger tight, into the boss that's behind the lower radiator hose to hold the pushrod up. Okay, so this is what it looks like in pictures. If you have the Chevy fuel pump, these run off of a pushrod, and that pushrod goes up through the block, up and runs off the cam. And there's a bolt boss where the red arrow is, where you can insert a bolt. It has a bolt in it that's normally short enough it doesn't touch anything, and it doesn't do anything other than fit into the front of the block. And you can replace it with a longer bolt. And then that longer bolt, if you put it in only finger tight, you don't want to put it in hard enough to bend the pushrod. You can get it to hold the pushrod long enough to switch the pump. And here's kind of a second picture of it off of a bare block. And you can see at the one side there down on in the left, in the yellow is the bolt boss, and then you can kind of see in the middle, the casting feature where the pushrod heads up toward the cam. And I'll tell you, when I was a teenager, I had a friend come over in the wintertime one time where he was having trouble a friend of his was having trouble getting their Impala to run, and they had swapped a fuel pump, and they had bent the push rod by not holding it up, and they bolted the fuel pump back in. And I'll tell you, I couldn't fix it because it's a hardened push rod, and I couldn't get a tool, a vice grip, anything on it and get it out. I've heard stories where people go, hey, you can go in there with a welder or something, you can tack weld something to the push rod. I mean, there are all kinds of people's solutions, but if you bend that push rod or you fail to support it properly, um, man, it's a tough deal. The other way to do it is to you take the plate off the side of the block and pull the push rod down, and you can use a big dose of grease on it and push it back up in, and the grease it will hold it there as well. But I used the bolt; it was pretty doggone handy. Put it in my can of gas and spun it over a couple of times, and it's pulling fuel, which certainly I wasn't doing before. I put in a new set of points in condenser, and measuring the old condenser, it looked open, it looked like it wasn't doing anything. So the only thing I would say is I will never use, they offer a set of points in condenser that's one unit rather than two pieces. I will never do that again because the condenser is bolted into the points so that you can't use a feeler gauge to set the points, and I tried everything, including disassembling the weights on the Advance. There just isn't any room to get even a tiny. I have a narrow, small feeler gauge. It wouldn't go in. I ended up disassembling them, installing it, setting the gap, and then reinstalling the condenser, which it's like 5 pieces that all have to go back together just right. I think I got it, but I measured it, and the condenser seems to be doing what a capacitor ought to do. So anyway, I'm going to see if I can make this thing run here now. So here's the original points and condenser out of the 62 Chevy, and the original ones were 2 pieces, and as I said, the new one that I put back in there was a 1 piece. And see, these guys have a screw that you can adjust the gap with it's an 1/8 inch Allen wrench, but these were kind of black on the inside. Not horrible, but not too good. And then this was the condenser. The new one that I put in, instead of being 2 pieces, you could still buy this, but it was installed, there was a bracket here, and it's installed like this. And so what you want to do is get your feeler gauge in over here so that you can set the point gap, the initial point gap. Like I say, if you don't have a dwell meter especially, the mechanical advance portion is up on top, so you can't I couldn't figure out how to get a feeler gauge in. Maybe if I bumped the engine enough, but it wasn't the right time. There just wasn't enough room. I couldn't get a feeler gauge in, and I just had little narrow feeler gauges. I don't know that I have them laying around here, but they were mini, and with the rubbing block here, you couldn't get a feeler gauge in from the backside. So I'll show you a picture if I can. So this is what that 1 piece set of ignition points and condenser looks like, and you can see with the big red arrow, there's that chunk of plastic there where the capacitor bolts in, and that's the insulator that keeps the capacitor separated. But there's several pieces in there, and the capacitor twists and screws into that assembly, and then the metal piece over the top that you can see up toward the upper left goes over and makes the connection. And here's a side view of that. And again, with the red arrow, you can see the plastic in the way, and right there, I mean, that's where you want to slide the feeler gauge in, because the point contact is immediately behind that chunk of plastic. And so, as I said, I was able to unscrew it and get all the pieces off, go in and set the points, and then screw this all back together while it was in the distributor. What a challenge. What I ended up doing was the condenser was screwed into the bracket with a couple of extra pieces, and I ended up unscrewing it, setting the points, locking them down, and then with it installed, screwing the capacitor back in and installing the little brackets. It would have been worth an extra $10 to buy it in 2 pieces. So on the condenser, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, I'm going to set this to 200 ohms, and with the wires not connected, it's wide open. And normally, you know, a condenser is a capacitor, and normally if you put an ohm meter on a capacitor, you'll see a low reading that will come up as the capacitor charges. And so on this guy, if you hit it, right now it's showing, you know, full scale, and it's right there. And you can also reverse the leads and take the charge the other way. And if I do that, it still doesn't move. And I've had it all the way up to maximum scale on the ohm meter scale, and it doesn't matter. That one's just dead. When I got the new one, I could put it down here on 200 ohms, and it would drop and come up to full scale, come up to maximum very consistently, and you know, that's what it took to get spark back. I guess I didn't have it on when I fired it up. Well, I wasn't going to run it too long, just enough to make sure that it ran, because next, you know, it needs coolant, the coolant changed, probably radiator cleaned. It does have some noise, a little bit of some knocking noise. I'm not sure what the, I mean, it hasn't run in, many years, so I would say the next thing would be to change the oil and cool it and start working it, figure out what and then diagnose what the noise is. So, well, I guess I proved that I could make it run, and it may need more work beyond that, but hey, that's great. That's great. Again, this windstorm, and you can hear it howling. The winds are running 35 to 40, gusting to 50 to 60 to 65, and the only thing that's helping me is I'm behind the house, and the house is blocking some of it, but it's just really whipping in here. So anyhow, I got her to start, and so now I'm gonna have to button things up. This is December, and at home we got 6 inches of snow and it's 0, and I think that's coming here soon. So I'm gonna button her up for now, and I guess that's all for now.